Consider the profound beauty of a quiet mind at work. For this deeply reflective soul, silence is not an absence of sound, but rather a canvas for creation. They spend countless hours wandering through the corridors of their own consciousness, weaving disconnected ideas together, solving emotional puzzles, and building magnificent structures of thought. This inner sanctuary is their refuge from a chaotic world. It is a place of sacred concentration. Now, imagine walking into a grand, silent cathedral where a master architect is delicately balancing a breathtaking tower of glass, and suddenly someone blares a horn or shouts a trivial question across the room. The glass shatters. This is exactly what happens when their deep flow of thought is abruptly interrupted. A casual tap on the shoulder, a loud intrusion, or a sudden demand for superficial attention does not just break their focus. It ruptures their sense of mental safety. To the outside observer, it seems harmless, but to the intuitive mind, they were diving miles beneath the surface, exploring the profound depths of an idea, and were just violently pulled back up to the shallow water without warning. The sudden shift leaves them disoriented, emotionally winded, and quietly grieving the loss of a beautiful thought that can never be perfectly reconstructed. They will not shout in anger, they will smile and answer your question. But inside, their sanctuary has collapsed, and it will take hours of deliberate, quiet grace to rebuild that inner peace. There is a fundamental principle that governs the heart of this gentle soul, and that principle is a deep, unwavering respect for human dignity. They move through the world, offering unconditional respect to everyone they meet, regardless of status, background, or ideology. They listen without interrupting, they observe without judging, and they believe in the inherent worth of every voice. Because they offer this grace so freely, there is one behavior that cuts them deeper than the sharpest blade. That behavior is condescension. It is the patronizing tone, the subtle smirk, the unsolicited advice given with an air of unearned superiority. When someone speaks down to them, assuming their quiet nature is a symptom of ignorance or weakness, it feels like a betrayal of the human spirit. These individuals possess a piercing intuition. They can see straight through the fragile ego of a person who belittles others to inflate themselves. They recognize the hollow nature of false authority. When subjected to condescending behavior, they do not retaliate with loud arguments. Instead, an invisible but impenetrable wall is instantly erected. They will nod politely, their face an elegant mask of composure, but in that very moment they have completely withdrawn their trust. They will mentally step away from the relationship, preserving their dignity in silence. They do not demand to be worshipped, but they absolutely require to be seen as equals, standing side by side in the shared grace of humanity. In a modern society that often feels like an endless masquerade ball, where people wear carefully crafted masks to seek approval, the deeply intuitive soul wanders the ballroom searching for a single authentic face. They do not expect perfection. They understand the tragic flaws and beautiful imperfections of the human condition. What they crave with every fiber of their being is the raw, unpolished truth. Therefore, nothing drains their spiritual energy faster than inauthenticity and desperate attention-seeking. They possess an almost supernatural ability to read the energy of a room. They hear the subtle shifts in vocal tone. They notice the forced smiles, and they feel the hollow resonance of fake compliments. When they encounter someone who changes their personality depending on who is watching, or someone who dominates the airspace to feed their own vanity, it feels incredibly abrasive to their soul. It is as if they are being forced to watch a poorly written play, trapped in the audience against their will. This aversion is not born of judgment, but of a deep need for emotional safety. Counterfeit behavior breeds distrust. If a person cannot be honest about who they are, the intuitive mind cannot feel secure in their presence. They would 1,000 times prefer the company of someone who is awkward, bruised, and wildly unconventional, as long as that person is real. True connection requires the courage to be vulnerable, and in the presence of authenticity, this rare soul blooms with unimaginable warmth and loyalty. Language is a divine gift, a bridge meant to connect isolated islands of human experience. But in our daily lives, this bridge is often reduced to the most superficial exchanges. We talk about the gray weather, the frustrating commute, the trivial headlines of the day. For the majority of society, this small talk is a comfortable social lubricant, but for the deeply empathetic and intuitive spirit, lingering in the shallow waters of small talk feels like dying of thirst while surrounded by an ocean. They do not despise the people making small talk. They understand the innocent intent behind it. However, their minds are fundamentally wired to seek meaning, philosophy, and soulful connection. Spending an hour discussing mundane pleasantries requires a monumental expenditure of their emotional energy. They find themselves standing at crowded networking events or family gatherings, smiling until their cheeks ache while their soul quietly begs for substance. They want to ask about your hidden dreams, the childhood memories that shaped your fears, the moments you felt most alive, and the heartbreaks that taught you resilience. They yearn to dive into the deep end of the human experience. When they are constantly starved of this depth, they begin to feel a profound sense of isolation, even in the center of a crowded room. To grant them 10 minutes of raw, honest, vulnerable conversation is to offer them a cup of cool water in a barren desert. It is in those deep waters that they finally feel at home. To navigate the overwhelming stimuli of the world, this thoughtful individual relies on a delicate internal scaffolding of order and foresight. They do not seek control for the sake of power, but rather for the preservation of their peace. They spend immense energy mentally preparing for the days ahead, mapping out conversations, anticipating emotional currents, and building a quiet fortress of predictability. When unmanaged chaos strikes, a sudden change of plans, an explosive emotional outburst, or an environment filled with unpredictable, frenetic energy, it sends a shockwave through their entire nervous system. It is like an unexpected earthquake trembling beneath a carefully constructed house of cards. The sudden shift demands an immediate, exhausting recalibration of their inner world. You might see them standing in a noisy, overcrowded airport, or caught in the middle of a sudden, dramatic workplace conflict. Outwardly, they remain the picture of composure, but inwardly, their mental alarms are ringing. They absorb the erratic energy of everyone around them, taking on the stress and anxiety of the crowd. This sensory and emotional overload rapidly depletes their reserves. They require gentleness, structure, and warning. When life inevitably brings chaos, as it always does, what they need most is a moment of grace, a quiet corner to retreat, breathe, and realign their spirit with the new reality before stepping back into the storm. There is a heavy, almost sacred burden that comes with possessing a boundless capacity for empathy. For this rare soul, the pain of the world is not an abstract concept watched on a television screen. It is a physical sensation, an ache that settles deep within their chest. Because they can instantly inhabit the emotional reality of another living being, there is absolutely nothing that shatters their spirit quite like cruelty and injustice. When they witness unfairness, whether it is a systemic oppression broadcasted across the globe or a quiet, sarcastic remark designed to belittle a vulnerable coworker, their moral compass violently rejects it. They are the quiet guardians of the playground, the silent advocates in the boardroom, the ones who notice the person left out in the cold. When someone wields their power to diminish another, the intuitive soul feels the sting as if the blow landed on their own skin. What exhausts them further is a society that often normalizes this harshness, brushing it off with phrases like, "That is just the way the world works." They refuse to accept a world where cruelty is the default setting. A single act of malice can haunt their thoughts for days, plunging them into a deep, melancholic reflection on the state of humanity. They distance themselves irrevocably from those who lack compassion, for they know that a heart devoid of kindness is a dangerous place. For them, empathy is not a weakness. It is the ultimate strength, the very foundation of a graceful and righteous life. As we conclude this journey into the depths of the quiet, intuitive mind, we must remember that understanding is the greatest gift we can offer one another. If you possess this rare and beautiful personality, please know that your sensitivities are not a burden to be fixed. They are the very instruments through which you bring warmth, insight, and profound healing to a fractured world. Your need for silence, your demand for respect, your craving for authenticity, your exhaustion with the shallow, your aversion to chaos, and your fierce rejection of cruelty are the hallmarks of a truly beautiful soul. You do not need to harden your heart to survive. You only need to protect your peace with unapologetic grace. And if you are walking through life alongside someone like this, you now hold the map to their inner sanctuary. You do not need to walk on eggshells or pretend to be perfect. You only need to offer them the truth, a gentle space to breathe, and the kindness they so freely give to everyone else. By honoring their quiet boundaries, you cultivate a relationship of unparalleled loyalty and breathtaking depth. May you always find the courage to protect your inner light, and may the days ahead bless you with profound peace, meaningful connections, and the quiet joy of being entirely understood. Thank you for sharing this sacred space with us today. May grace and tranquility follow you wherever your journey leads.